Mrs. McCool and the Giant Cuhullin, an Irish tale by Jessica Souhami. Mrs. McCool and the Giant Cuhullin. Long ago there lived a giant called Cuhullin. My, but he was big and fierce and strong. And what made him so strong? He had a magic finger, and believe it or not, all his strength was in that little finger. Now, Cuhullin had fought all the other giants and squashed them flat. Well, all but one, and that was Finn McCool. "Where is that Finn McCool?" he said. "When I find him, pow, wham, flat as a pancake he'll be. That'll prove I'm the strongest giant in all of the world." And off he went in search of Finn. What was he like, this Finn McCool? And where was he all this while? Was he spoiling for a fight? Well, that huge Finn was lying low and sucking his thumb. But then Finn's thumb was magic. When he sucked it, Finn could see what would happen next. And he could see Cuhullin was coming to get him. "Oh dear," he cried. "Not that I'm scared of that old Cuhullin, not at all. Well, perhaps just the tiniest littlest bit scared. What shall I do?" And poor Finn trembled. "I'd best go home to my wife, Una. She's got me out of trouble many times before." Una was waiting to welcome him. Finn told Una all about Cuhullin. "Keep calm, Finn," she said. "I'll think of something. Just suck your magic thumb to see when Cuhullin will arrive." Finn sucked his thumb. "Today, Una," he called out. "Today." Said Una. "And when today?" Finn sucked his thumb again. "This afternoon." Said Una. "And what time this afternoon?" Finn sucked harder. "At 4 o'clock." "4 o'clock," said Una. "That's tea time." And she started to laugh. "I've such a plan, Finn," she said, and Una set to work. Una started by making some bread. She made enough dough for 2 big round loaves. She left one plain, but in the other one she placed an iron griddle, the iron griddle that she usually heated on the fire to cook pancakes. And when the 2 loaves came out of the oven, they looked exactly the same. And then Una hid Finn in a giant baby's cradle. Well, all of him that would fit inside, and she put a baby's bonnet on his head, and they waited for Cuhullin. They waited, and they waited, and just as the clock was striking 4, there was a great banging at the door. "Do come in," said brave Mrs. McCool. And in came the Giant Cuhullin. "Is Finn McCool at home?" he boomed. "No," Una said calmly. There's just me and the baby. Finn's out looking for some big silly called Cuhullin who wants to fight him. Poor Cuhullin. Finn will make mincemeat out of him." But she smiled at Cuhullin. "But I'm Cuhullin." "Bah!" said Una scornfully, looking him up and down. "You've not met my Finn." "Well, you can wait for him here if you dare, and I'll brew some tea. But first, will you do a small job for me? Will you lift the house so I can sweep the dust from under it? Finn does it every day." What a storyteller Una was. Cuhullin was astonished. "Well, if Finn can do it, so can I," he said, and he went outside. Cuhullin stretched out his brawny arms and gripped the house, and he heaved and shoved and grunted and groaned and grunted and shoved and heaved and groaned, and just as he felt he might burst, the house began to move. And Una calmly swept the dust from under it as if the house was lifted up every single day. "That Finn must be mighty strong," muttered Cuhullin. Meanwhile, Finn, who was hiding in the cradle, trembled and shook from head to foot. "Thank you, dear man," said Una. "Now, if you'll just fill the kettle from the spring, I'll make the tea." Cuhullin looked out. "Where is the spring, Mrs. McCool?" he asked. "Oh, it's under that pebble," Una replied, pointing to a huge boulder. "Finn lifts it to get water every day." What a storyteller Una was. "That pebble's a mountain," he said. "But if Finn can do it, so can I." And he went down the hill and put his huge shoulders to the boulder. Cuhullin heaved and shoved and grunted and groaned and grunted and shoved and heaved and groaned, and just as he felt he might burst, the boulder began to move. Una was as calm as if the boulder were lifted every day, but Cuhullin, wearily filling the kettle, was thinking, could this Finn be stronger than I? Meanwhile, Finn, who was hiding in the cradle, trembled and shook from head to foot. At last, Cuhullin sat down to tea. "Do have one of my home-baked loaves," said Una, and she gave Cuhullin the loaf with the iron griddle inside. He took a big bite. "Arg!" he yelled. "I can't eat this, Mrs. McCool. It'll break all my teeth. It's hard as iron." "But it's Finn's favorite bread, Mr. Cuhullin," said Una. "Finn and even the baby eat it every day." What a storyteller Una was. And just then Finn called out, as if he really was a baby, "Wah, wah, Mama, hungry, Mama." "Oh, see now, Mr. Cuhullin," said Una, trying not to laugh. "You've woken the baby. Just give him that other loaf, if you please." And Cuhullin did as she asked. But remember, this was a proper loaf. There was no iron griddle inside. Finn ate the loaf in 3 bites. "Yum, yum, Mama," he said, "all gone." Cuhullin was astonished. If the baby could eat this bread, what could Finn do? And should he stay to find out? Just then, Finn sat up in the cradle. "Goodness!" exclaimed Cuhullin. "Look at the size of him! Look at that mustache! If this is the baby, what must Finn be like?" He moved to the door. "I really must be going, Mrs. McCool," he mumbled. "Oh, dear," said Una calmly. "Finn will be sorry to have missed you. Before you go, just see what lovely teeth my baby's growing. Feel his little gums." "Just to please you, Mrs. McCool," said Cuhullin, "and then I'll be off." Cuhullin leaned over the cradle and put his little finger, his magic little finger, into Finn's mouth, and guess what? Snap! Finn bit it off. And with a whoosh, Cuhullin started to shrink. He got tinier and tinier and teenier and teenier, and he ran right out of the house, and he hopped and he jumped and he skipped down the hill and ran far away and was never, ever seen again. As for Finn and Una, they laughed and laughed. "Una, my clever wife, you've saved me once again." "It was nothing, dear Finn," said Una. "Big is big, but brains are better." And they danced and they laughed and they danced, and if I'm not wrong, they are laughing and dancing still. The end.